What is the Internet of Things? According to Matt Burgess from Wired UK, the Internet of Things can be defined as a globalized network or communicative network of devices that can all essentially talk to one another. Now, in terms of this topic, the question that I wanted to propose was that to what extent has the advancement of the Internet of Things within the United States influenced the outreach of communication based data networks from 2010 to the present? And I am the presenter, and my name is Sarah Khan. Now, in terms of this question, I found that there were three claims that can be addressed in terms of discussing this topic. The first one being how the business market has been affected by the possibility of consumer demand being involved in IoT becoming a more various and involved product, the possible risk or caution at future of user security by which cybersecurity and certain vulnerabilities will become a major concern, as they already have been, but on a different level, and also in how the fact that just because data is being exchanged more rapidly across larger enterprise networks does not limit it to smaller networks also being involved. They can also have their own advantages used. Now, the market and consumer relationship has always been very specific in that the consumer is always right, and the consumer drives the market in terms of how the market is going to then produce certain goods, manufacture, and so on. The matter of IoT presents its whole other domain in which products can be produced and how IoT devices can be used for the consumer purpose. So what this means is that the business model of certain industries can be affected by how either they want to use IoT to their own advantage in order to sell products further or to even just sell IoT devices to their consumers. It's dependent on the type of industry as well. Certain technologies might use them over than others. And also the fact that as more connectivity is being found, so is the fact that the economy is going to be affected as well. And with this comes the fact that industry in itself, having this increase of data, means acknowledging the consumer involvement in the process even further. The fact that the consumer relationship between the market and such is being understood means that with more data also means that more connectivity is prevalent. The fact that the market is being involved means the consumer involvement has to be accorded for, and that the market is then transforming how they want to approach the intel and output that they're getting from the consumer. Do they want to increase the use of IoT, or do they want to choose to go a different pathway? So again, that has to be addressed. Now, understandably, this seems to be a bit more on the benefit side, but the risk of cybersecurity also needs to be addressed. Cybersecurity and the internet has always been an issue or a discussion topic by which users don't want their private data or personal information being accessed by anonymous users. But also in the fact that IoT as a whole other domain also presents issues with financial cost. IoT is not just a simple thing that can be bought for a low price. It's very expensive indeed. And the costs that are being seen possibly is that some businesses might not be willing to possibly use IoT because of how expensive it is. And the fact that IoT guarantees a very rapid speed of data being exchanged, almost at light speed to a certain extent. With this fact, it's very difficult to determine how much they want to use the information of IoT being available and just how much they're willing to pay for it. So the costs level out a bit, and possibly that presents an issue. And again, on the cybersecurity matter, an actual study conducted by HP did find that there were certain risks that consumers found when products were surveyed of their own that were using IoT. A lot of issues found where users were concerned with the possibility of said hackers or said outside users accessing their information. And private information, again, it's the whole thing with how people don't want their personal information just being out there at a certain extent. They don't just want anybody being able to use it. Now, even though there seems to be some discouragement from this side in terms of possibly not using IoT, the fact that IoT also has its benefits seems to come into play in that IoT is seemingly for convenience. There isn't just a limit to how businesses can use it, but also in how consumers and the everyday average American citizen can also find themselves using it. Hospitals and related industries in transportation or in facilities involved in construction and infrastructure are able to use IoT to their advantage to further their own industries in terms of how medical equipment can be advanced, certain devices within building and architecture can be advanced, in order to speed up the process or to involve more IoT, as the digital media age is essentially what we are entering and what we are going to continue entering. And the American society, as a result, is going to be affected by this. Connectivity is going to be everywhere, and data is going to be at the access simply of a touch of a screen, where a user could just be able to simply touch their phone and access tons of amount of information, not just from their own personal devices that are either smart home technology in their houses or just simply out on the street walking with their phone, but also from other users all around them. It's a cloud essentially that is being formed in the city or any environment they can be found in. There's no limit to how possible that could be. And again, IoT is not just a large moneymaker. It's not limited simply to large enterprise networks like HP or Microsoft selling devices of IoT to consumers at the highest amount, possibly just for their own gain. The fact is that there's also been instances where smaller businesses have been able to use IoT to their advantage as well. An actual example was found in New York City of a small recycling community center being able to use IoT in order to more efficiently and more cleanly affect the environment in terms of cleaning up litter from Central Park, much more at a different pace or a different standard than the regular trash system was able to do. So it seems to be having much more personal investment and advantage on reaching more people in their own purpose of being a recycling community, but also in just being able to actually impact the environment the way they want to more further than they already were able to. Now, given that there's been many interests and many points addressed on mass IoT usage, there are some possible solutions that can be presented on how IoT could be used. The fact that further study and research could be conducted on just how far IoT can go in certain industries and for the various access of the market. Being able to establish better means of security in terms of virus or hacker protocol, firewall buildup, and related security measures that could be conducted, and also possibly allowing for government involvement where laws or acts could be enacted that would regulate just how much of this IoT technology could business utilize. They don't want an overflow necessarily where it's going to cut out the amount of availability that can be possible, but also they don't want to limit just how much technology can be available. So finding a certain centerpiece or a certain balance between the two is possible, potentially. But again, each of these solutions have their own limitations to a certain point, in which just because the government or certain studies are conducted that say some things about IoT, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that businesses are going to follow through on that advice, supposedly. The businesses have their own individual rights in terms of how they want to meet the demands of their consumers. It is an absolute guarantee that they're going to conform to the standards of a government act just because they're being told what to do. Again, it's the matter of just how they choose to use IoT to their advantage, and already the costs were addressed in the fact that just because IoT seems to be advantageous doesn't necessarily mean they want to use it. All right, thank you. And do you have any questions?
I do have two questions for you. Excuse me. First question. Tell me about your sources. How valid and reliable were they, and how do you know that they were?
I would say that the majority of my sources, though a few of them were possibly tier 3 or tier 4, if you consider it in terms of credibility, the majority of them were indeed very credible. I was able to trace back the sources to individual stimulus that they had been using in their own research and in their own studies. For example, the one from Purdue Global by Ahmed Benafa on the Internet of Things, Opportunities and Challenges. That one actually had a lot of data and statistics regarding a study that was done by Gartner. And that same study was also mentioned in the Dataversity article by Michelle Knight on how the financial costs were going to run going into 2022 with security concerns and such. And again, the mention of how the influx of data from IoT is almost at light speed. So what does that present possibly for the future?
Okay, and if you had more time, what additional research would you do?
I believe I possibly would have committed more to actually getting a lot more statistics involved from the Gartner study and possibly a related study. The Gartner study is one based in the UK, so potentially I would have liked to address a possibly more global approach. But again, my question is limited solely to the United States, so I chose to kind of just stay back on that and not try to go overboard. And again, also the cybersecurity thing, I didn't try to do too much because cybersecurity with IoT, that's something anyone could talk about. And a friend of mine did indeed actually talk about that in her own research paper and presentation. And I felt like that would just not necessarily be like original almost. It'd just be doing the same thing as someone else, just in a different format. So I guess additionally, I would have maybe liked to have taken a different approach or perspective, but I think ultimately the one I chose just fit better with my question.
All right, thank